bump into people and you haven't seen them in a while or see them at the gym, the first thing that they're going to ask you is, oh, how's your training going? Or have you got any comps coming up? Recently had a miscarriage or been recovering or working towards trying to get pregnant again. Yeah, don't really ever know what to say. So, hello. So for those of you that follow me on Instagram, you probably already know this, that I'm pregnant. And again, if you follow me online elsewhere, you'll know that I've previously competed as a under 64 kilo strongwoman. But the last year and a half has looked very different for me. I did quite a lot of, big important competitions during the 2023 season. I fell pregnant at the end of 2023 and unfortunately have suffered a few losses in between then. So I guess I just wanted to talk about, briefly what's happened from then until now, purely because I think I really want to get back into posting content about strong women, and typically, my content was always training, comp prep, things like that on Instagram, but I haven't really known what to post or what to say. And probably a lot of you know this, that whenever you see people in strongman and maybe other sports as well, bump into people and you haven't seen them in a while or see them at the gym, the first thing that they're going to ask you is, oh, how's your training going? Or have you got any comps coming up? Maybe it's because we don't really know what else to say, or it just seems like the most obvious, touch point for us all. But I guess, when people I haven't seen in a while say to me, oh, how's your training? And any comps coming up? I haven't really known what to say. Either I've, recently had a miscarriage or been recovering or working towards trying to get pregnant again. And it's, don't really ever know what to say. So I feel really glad to kind of be, out of that period of, loss and also secrecy, or at least trying to just, preserve my privacy. But and I really just want to talk about, my experience of trying to continue training and being pregnant. But this video, I just wanted to do a brief rundown of, what the last couple of years have looked like for anyone who doesn't know. So in 2023, actually the very, very end of 2022, I actually had neck surgery. I had cervical disc replacement and I managed to kind of recover from that reasonably quickly, which was great. I wasn't sure how much competing I'd do in 2023, but I qualified for England. I came second at England, which I came second to Kate Connolly. So honestly, if any of you know her, that was a win in my eyes. I was, incredibly honoured to come second to somebody like Kate. And then I'd also qualified for official Strongman Games, the European Championships in the summer. And, I'd never done a competition like that before, huge arena, incredibly prestigious. And just really exciting to take part. And I'd also then qualified for the official Strongman Games World's Final in the December. And that was being held in the States, in Charleston, West Virginia. Not the good Charleston. And again, that was it just felt like my strongwoman trajectory was kind of just going up and up and up. That was my best year by far, the biggest comps I'd ever done. With OSG, the finals, I was honestly just very honoured to be there. I didn't zero anything, which also was a huge bonus. But I felt like everything was going up and up and up. But, I kind of hit the pinnacle of the competitions that, I'd want to kind of take part in, but naturally, there was huge areas of my performance that I, wanted to improve on. And as ever, you're just building plans for, what's next. But then we literally got back from the States in the December, and me and my fiance, now husband, pretty much fell pregnant immediately. It was an accident. We definitely talked about having kids before, but I think neither one of us had really thought that it was going to be happening right then. And for both of us, we still had things we wanted to do. And me competing, I hadn't quite kind of come to terms with, taking a break from competing. And also my husband, Jack, he, in terms of his career, still had things he wanted to kind of do before we started having kids. But regardless, we fell pregnant. It's one of those things that I think you don't really think that you necessarily want something until you then have it. And then kind of, lose it. So we'd, spoken about how we were going to figure it out. we were actually due to get married in the May, which was another kind of worrisome point on how we were going to manage that. But again, we were just like, we'll figure it out, we'll make it work. And I'd already said to myself that I wouldn't be competing in the spring, summer, because I knew myself well enough that if I had a competition that was like either right before the wedding or right after the wedding, I tell myself that I'd be chill and focused on enjoying our wedding, but I know myself well enough that that probably wouldn't be the case, especially with cutting weight and probably an inevitable water cut. We were pregnant like middle of December, but then towards the end of January, I miscarried, unfortunately. Big shock, I guess, nobody really anticipates that it's going to happen to them. And yeah, it was really devastating and really difficult to, I guess, get over, because I guess maybe I'd kind of accepted the loss of the person that I was, in terms of started to come to terms with, okay, you're not going to be competing, you're not going to be doing these things, but, you'll have all these other exciting things to look forward to. And then you're kind of just left with this, I guess, loss on all aspects of what was before and what was to come, really. But we, decided that, we just focus on getting married, and we had a wonderful wedding. It was beautiful in Greece. But we'd then spoken about, right, we'll wait until the end of the year before we try again, for various reasons, health reasons, timing and whatnot. And so me and Jack, worked quite hard to, clean up our diet, sleep better, things like that. Just trying to just dial in the small things just to make sure you're as healthy as possible. And again, at that point, we had no information as to why I'd miscarried. Everything we were told was it's just unfortunately one of those things that can happen. We then tried again in December 2024 and fell pregnant immediately. So again, both times I had no problem falling pregnant. And then unfortunately I miscarried again, but I actually miscarried slightly earlier this time. So the first time I miscarried maybe about 8 weeks. This time it was around between 5 and 6. And this time I guess it was even I was even more angry, because it didn't really, I felt like we'd done everything and didn't have any strict answers. I had an ultrasound on my uterus. I'd done blood tests. So again, was trying to be very proactive about it, and no clear indication as to why this was happening. I guess in terms of Strongman, during this period, I'd accepted that I wasn't competing, but as I kind of indicated earlier, it's the loss of what was and the loss of what could be. And you're kind of in this limbo of well, I'm not really doing the things I want to do, but I'm also not working towards, having a baby. I then went and started seeing an acupuncturist. Yeah, and I'll talk about this in another episode, fully about the acupuncture, because honestly, I don't have enough praise to give it. It was fantastic. But yeah, I started doing acupuncture almost immediately after the second miscarriage. But actually, to be fair, it wasn't intended that way. I'd started to show some signs of things not being quite right. And so Jack booked me in for an acupuncture appointment. He'd read a lot about how acupuncture and fertility, work really well together. So he booked me in. Unfortunately, I did miscarry before the appointment, but we decided to keep it anyway, just purely thinking, it'd probably make me just feel a little better. And anyway, I've been doing acupuncture for months now. And then we tried again in the April, again, fell pregnant straight away. And yeah, now we're at 14 weeks, which is incredibly exciting. So yeah, it's just been a really weird, year and a half of, especially for me as the woman, being in this weird limbo state of not really being the person I was, but then also not really moving into this new, version of myself, I guess. But it's taught me a lot of patience. And yeah, but I guess for a long time, I haven't really known how to show up online, because yeah, it's what do you say? My training's been really all over the place. I've still trained quite consistently. I can probably count on one hand the amount of weeks that I just didn't train at all. But naturally, miscarriages are quite taxing on the body, and ultimately I was more focused on recovery than I was about trying to pound strength goals. So yeah, that's what we're kind of up to now. And yeah, I would just love to talk more about my experience, because I know that this is the type of content that I was like screaming out for. I would consume anything to do with, you know, fertility, but also training. There's definitely a few resources that I've relied on quite heavily for looking at, you know, strength training and pregnancy and fertility and things like that. But yeah, it's just a strange thing, I think, because especially in Strongman, I don't really see like a huge amount of women talking about their training and say pregnancy. Probably the only person I can think of that's really like talked about it a lot was Shannon Smith, who's also an under 64 kilo athlete. But ultimately, like, having kids is something that all women have to wrestle with, even if they choose, you know, not to have kids, or maybe they've already had kids. You know, it's still a very like uniquely female experience that we all have to, you know, consider. So yeah, I would just love to talk more about my experience and my journey going forwards, because yeah, I'm just really excited to be able to continue training and see what happens, really. But yeah, and like I said, like I'd love to talk about, like, you know, like the experience of actually training through pregnancy, what I've done up until this point. I'd love to talk about the acupuncture I've done. Yeah, just what I'll be doing going forward, really. But yeah, I hope you all enjoyed listening, and sorry if this is a bit rambly, but if you have any requests of things you'd like me to talk about, you know, please let me know. But yeah, I've got like heaps of things that I want to talk about. And yeah, like I said, it's definitely content that I really enjoy consuming. So I hope you guys too. But thank you for listening, and see you next time.